What do you get when you cross Scream with Freaky Friday? Well, you get the slasher comedy Freaky, of course. I didn't get a chance to see it in the theaters because I live in California and, well, basically everything's shut down because of COVID. But great news, it is now available on VOD. After swapping bodies with a deranged serial killer, a high school girl discovers that she only has 24 hours to switch back, or else the change is permanent. Vince Vaughn and Kathryn Newton star in this mashup of genres. The opening scene felt a bit reminiscent of Scream, but it was kind of rough. And actually, the first part of the movie is a little bit rough. I mean, the story is setting up our heroine, and they have a lot of crude and crass jokes, and they just pretty much fall flat to me. And I was watching it, and at the beginning part of it, I'm questioning, should I really have sat down to watch this? But once the swap happens, that's when the fun begins, and that's where the movie really finds its stride. Vince Vaughn is the killer called the Butcher, and Kathryn Newton is Millie. Now, once they swap bodies, Vaughn playing Millie is hilarious. I mean, it's almost to the level of Jack Black playing a girl in Jumanji, almost there. He captures the essence and movements of his female counterpart really well. And one of my favorite parts is watching Vince Vaughn run as Millie. You have this big, bulking character. I mean, what is Vince Vaughn like in real life? He's like 6'6" or something like that. I mean, he is not a small man. And so to have him kind of holding his hands up and kind of just prancing along as he runs daintily off was hilarious. Now, Newton playing the Butcher probably had the easier job. She's pretty quiet and stoic, and she's doing her best to portray this menacing, cold-blooded killer. I do wish the story, though, would have set up the Butcher as more of a dynamic villain, because that would have given Newton more to do with the character. I mean, she's mean, and she captures it well. Her performance is good, but it's just not overly demonstrative. She just kind of walks around brooding and has these slow movements, which can be menacing, but not always. So it doesn't give her too much of a range to work in while she's portraying the killer. I'm pretty okay with the choice of victims in this movie too, because like they say in Boondock Saints, they're bad guys. Now they're dead bad guys. The supporting cast is fun too. Millie has two best friends, Josh and Nyla, and they have really good chemistry together, and the trio works really well when they're interacting with Kathryn Newton and when they're interacting with Vince Vaughn. And I love how they make fun of some of the stereotypes that you typically find within horror movies or movies in general. At one point, while they're being chased, Josh, the character, yells out to Nyla, "You're black, I'm gay, we're gonna die." And it's just that poking fun, that self-awareness, and really just poking fun at what has been held up as stereotypes of you know what, the black characters die first, the gay characters die first, or they're portrayed as very weak. All of these characters in other movies, especially in older movies, are wiped out almost immediately. But these two characters, they're strong, they're cunning, don't mess with them. Now, I mentioned that the dialogue is pretty crude, and it is. I think it's trying to be edgy at times. I didn't find it edgy. I found it unnecessarily crass, and when they were trying to go for humor in that, it didn't make me laugh. Because this is a horror, and even as a comedy horror, I expect there to be some violence. Wow. This delivers. The deaths, though, they're not what I'd call novel or unique, but they are gory. It's fun and exciting, and a lot of it is pretty brutal, and they don't really shy away from showing the carnage. Now, this does have a lot of predictability to it, but it didn't bother me. The story moved along pretty well, and it balanced out the thrills with comedy and even some quieter moments. Now, this isn't a perfect movie by any means. I mean, plenty of times we had characters who were making stupid decisions, we had bumbling cops, and then there are a ton of conveniences thrown in that prevent the Butcher from being caught. But even with those negatives, it's still a pretty enjoyable film. Right now, this is around the $20 range to rent. So that's pretty steep if you're watching it by yourself. But if you're with family and friends, I mean, it's not that bad of an investment, and it's certainly a lot cheaper than if you were able to see it in the theaters. This is an hour and 42 minutes of blood and chuckles. The cast is great, the story is engaging, and they provide enough chills and gore to scratch that horror itch. And then to top it off, you have Vince Vaughn and his performance. And he is really the reason to watch this. I mean, he did such a great job. I loved it when he was on screen, especially as he's playing the character of Millie. He shines, he has a bunch of fun with it, and that translates to us having a lot of fun as well. There's sex, no nudity, a lot of profanity, and a ton of gory violence. I give Freaky 3.5 out of 5 couches. Are you a fan of genre mashups? What's one that you really enjoy? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.